Welcome. This is the podcast of Care Austria with Andrea Bastorf-Hager.
A warm welcome to our Care in Action podcast. Today we are producing an English version of it because my very special guest of today is a very appreciated colleague of mine, a care colleague. It is Claudine Mensah. Welcome, Claudine, to Vienna.
Thank you, Andrea.
She is living now in Nigeria, in Abuja. We will talk about that a little bit later. At the moment, we are hosting an international meeting about West Africa here in Vienna. And for this occasion, Claudine came to visit us. And I'm happy to produce this podcast now with her. Like always, I also want to introduce her briefly. Claudine is 51 at the moment. She was born and raised in Togo, in Lomé, the capital. And she has been working for nearly or more than 25 years in different positions at CARE. And at the moment, she's holding the position of being Director of Global Operations. And she's with CARE US at the moment, and she's responsible for the operations in all the places in the world that CARE is working in. But as you are very much aware, this podcast is not only about CARE, it's about the people working for and with CARE. And so I would like to ask Claudine, we have known each other for more than a decade, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about your childhood and how it was when you were a little girl in Lomé, a little bit about your family. Would you share that with us?
Sure. Thank you, Andrea. This is a great opportunity for me today to be with you and produce this podcast. Indeed, as you said, I was born and raised in Lomé 51 years ago. I am the third of 4 siblings. So I have a sister and 2 brothers. Our parents were in education and also politics for my father. How it was to grow in a country like Togo. First, my country is a small one, as you know, in West Africa. But I come from a tiny minority. And in my ethnical group, women are known to be vocal and powerful. And this has been cascaded to me as part of my education.
By tradition?
By tradition,
okay.
Yes. Though it is not perfect, but compared to other groups. Because in my culture, women used to work outside, contribute to and participate to managing households. Especially for those who have been educated, like my mother, she was a teacher. She insisted for my sister and I that we know that the society in which we are raised does not give much opportunities for women. That even when you are equal in education, it is difficult for you. And she insisted that though we came from an ethnical group that favors women's rights, it is not the ideal. So I was raised in that mindset. And my grandmothers also contributed to it. And I remember that my maternal grandmother, she told me when I was 20-ish, she said, Claudine, before you get married, ensure that you can feed yourself, you can feed the number of children you will have, you can put clothes on them, you can put roof on their head before you get married.
That was your grandmother?
My grandmother who told me that. This is to give you an idea of what it was. That said, as I said, I come from a minority. But the majority in my country, and this is the neighborhood in which we grew up, which was what we can call maybe lower middle class, I witnessed violence against women from highly ranked people. It's an indication of how exposed women can be, depending on the culture and how they were raised. And it doesn't matter how educated they are. But at the moment, they don't earn their bread, as we say in my country. and they don't acknowledge the fact that they have the decision on their lives. It becomes difficult for them to speak up in their household, even when they are breadwinners or when they contribute to the household's resources.
Mm-hmm. You're touching on very interesting points, because your grandmother told you something quite similar that my grandmother and my mother told me as well. And I'm 56, so I'm 5 years older than you. And when I was a child in Vienna, we talk about Lomé in West Africa and Vienna now, also my mother and grandmother, both grandmothers, told me actually that it is really important to be financial-wise independent. Yeah.
Yes.
And if we memorize briefly what we are discussing nowadays about gender equality and how important it is that women have the same chances and possibilities, I think many things have changed, but many things are still to change. And of course, the human rights aspect is strong in all that, because female rights are human rights, but good education, high education if possible, and even more important, a decent income. These are really the ingredients for leading a happy, independent female life, isn't it? No matter whether it's West Africa or Central Europe, I would say.
Indeed, Andrea. The economic autonomy or independence for women is critical in ensuring that our rights are fulfilled. Though it doesn't guarantee it, but it is the major point into that. And this is part of the work we do as CARE. As you said, I've been working with CARE for nearly 25 years. It is so important that we women, we ensure that whatever happens, we are able to make our own income, and we have control on the use of it. And in case we work in countries, in communities where women, although they have their own income, they are not able to have a voice on how to use it, this is our role to support them, to empower them to do that, to give them the confidence in themselves. You know, for working in many places, engaging with my female colleagues at CARE, and with female colleagues, with other organizations, with peers, I realized that, as you said, the situation is not that different from a village or capital city, the US or Central Europe. I was talking to colleagues, a couple of female colleagues, young colleagues, 30. And I was asking them what it is to be a professional woman, a professional mother, a professional wife in Nigeria. I did the same in Togo, but the responses are similar. It's all like, one told me, I feed my husband, I feed my children. But last week at night, my husband called me and said, I'm thirsty. And I was like, can't you go and fetch water for yourself? And she said, this is a tiny example, but it shows how much he believes I'm his servant to give him water. I would go to work and come back, but do everything at home, including taking care of the kids, cooking food, ensuring that kids do their school assignments. And she was like, and yet I am a strong woman, I'm highly educated, I have a high income, and this is our lives.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because how to have a fair share in the housework, which is a necessity. I mean, some like it, some don't. It is a necessity that has to be done. And the fair share in housework, it feels magazines, books, and endless discussions also here until today. And many people believe that a couple has to deal with it. Yes, on one side, yes. But on the other side, the states we are living in can have a enabling setting for gender equality or a less enabling setting. And I'm a bit ashamed to say that Austria, we have many things in place, but there are still things missing. Yeah, and we are a little bit remote when we come and compare with Scandinavian countries. And then it is said, yes, because we are so very traditional. But we talked a lot about how important it is to generate income for an independent life. This is true for everyone and also for men. And I want to say that CARE is working, of course, with girls, boys, men and women. But we are focusing on gender equality as one of our cross-cutting topics. The other side of the coin, when women work, is not only generating income for their personal life, it is also that we have to contribute a lot, isn't it?
Yes.
It is the vocality in society. It's not only generating income, it is being part of decision-making, of qualified decision-making, of contributing to social life, to professional life, to everything. Isn't that also
Absolutely.
very important?
Absolutely. And this is the tricky thing. Sometimes you have the impression as a woman, a professional woman making her own income, like you are bargaining or you are sort of buying your right to contribute. Mm-hmm. But this is because gender inequality is so rooted in our societies. Though we have constitutions, laws, policies that all declare equality, it is difficult to acknowledge and make effective the participation of women at all levels, to the policies we make, to the social norms, to cultural norms, so many things about the education of children, ourselves, and making our own decisions. We have been fighting for this equality for so long, but the question is, why do we still see such a disparity? Why do we see in a country like in Niger, in West Africa, 76% of girls marrying before the age of 18?
Yeah.
Or in the biggest economy in West Africa, Nigeria, 43% of girls marrying before the age of 18. You see, this is unacceptable. But at the same time, these are countries, especially Nigeria, where you can find the strongest women in West Africa or in Africa, being in business, in politics, in many areas, academics, etc. But how can we connect these strengths, this power within, to the situation that so many women are living?
In their day, experiencing in their daily
lives. Absolutely. Yeah. And this is something that we should constantly ask. And it is not only responsibilities of international organizations like CARE or only civil society organizations in countries where we work, but for every citizen, men, women, boys, girls, as you said. This is why at CARE we work with them all. The journey started long ago, but is still long ahead of us. But we see signs of hope. I am a mother of a girl. My daughter is 11. When I look at her and her friends, whatever level they are from, when I see how confident they stand compared to myself when I was 10, 11, I am hopeful. I went into a community that we serve, and I will talk about my daughter later. I went into a community that we serve in rural Benin in West Africa. We were talking with a woman and her children. You know, in West Africa, less than 1% of women own land. But they form the majority of the labor force in agriculture.
More than 70%, right?
Absolutely, more than 70%. We were talking with this, we had a project as CARE with women in that community about increasing ownership to land. We are working at that level, but also working on policies and enforcement of the policies. So she managed to get a plot of land and she had a garden. She grew vegetables that she sold. So I went there at the end of the project, funded by the European Union. And we were talking, and I said, "Oh, the project is ending." And she stopped me immediately, very confidently, and she said, "Claudine, this project might be ending for you, but it's the starting of a journey for me. Because through this project, I've been able to not only understand the importance for education for my children, but pay for my daughter to be at school. And I'm now member of the Village Development Committee. I have my say. When we decide on an action plan in my community, I say this is good for children or not. This is good for women or not. Men should do this and that." And what more than the words she used, it was the confidence, the strength I could feel in her. And she said, "This is my daughter. You can ask her what change she saw in my life." And her daughter, who was like 10, 11, was able to build on that. And she said, "Now I can see my mother. She is in groups. She talks with the chief, etc. And I'm proud of her. And I want to do more than her and to go outside my village at our district level to be able to raise my voice." And she told me, "I would like to be your boss tomorrow." I was the country director at that time in Benin. "I want to be your boss tomorrow." And I said, "That will be my pride to see you as my boss tomorrow." And this is the strength I see also in my daughter, I have triplets, 2 boys, 1 girl. So I can see she is powerful and she raises her voice as she should. And she knows her place. And it helps it also feeds my commitment, my passion to see all this beauty, this progress we are seeing. Though the situation is far from ideal, there are signs of hope and change.
Super. Because this was really an excellent example how important self-confidence is, and it should start really early in childhood, ideal-wise, for both genders, but especially for girls, to be really self-confident and convinced that you can reach what you are planning, what you are longing for. And it was also an excellent example how important role models are. And this again applies to West Africa as much as to Central Europe. All of us, we should be role models for the younger generation, that you can really, if you work hard, if you really want to achieve something, that it is possible, but you need role models and you need also the ability to do some networking. And you need strong women and men, but also women, that you can connect to and with and really share things together. Then it can really work, because we talked a lot about we were lucky because we had families that strengthened us from day one. But this is unfortunately not always the case. So if this does not happen inside the family, then it becomes more and more difficult for children to become self-confident. Yeah, then you need a teacher or an outside family friend, but then it gets more and more complicated. So I think we can agree that it is really important that providing the ability to be self-confident as a child is really, the sparkle starts in your own family, ideal-wise. It can happen elsewhere, but it is ideal if it can happen in the family. So I think this is the reason why CARE is working a lot with parents, yes, because they, of course, create the children of tomorrow, and they have to work with them on topics like education, gender equality, and things like that. So we have all over the world, we have good examples how it can work, but the examples are still, of course, too small. Finally, I would like to mention, when it comes to CARE Austria, we are the biggest partner of the European Union here in country. We are proud of that, by far the biggest partner. And we have heard now a very good example how really the investments of the European Union, that are highly debated very often, especially in times of economic crisis, really bring change to the ground. And often it's not visible, but this is what CARE is existing for. We help people to look twice and to look behind the curtain. And then you can see that transformational change happens, but it takes time, not only in places like West Africa, but also in our own societies. So Claudine, a little bit back to you, because you did your PhD.
Yes.
I did my PhD. Was it difficult for you to do it? Were you encouraged, or did you have to fight for it?
Well, thank you for this question, Andrea. It took time for me to do my PhD after my master. It took 12 years for me to complete it because I was a mother in between and then with my professional obligations. But I would say that I was strongly encouraged by my mother and my husband. Yes. My mother, because she was born in the early 40s, she didn't have the opportunity to go to the university. She stopped at secondary school. So she always used to say that you do what I couldn't do, cover the gap that I've missed in my life. So she has pushed a lot for us to go to school and to achieve well. So she was sick at the time. I was getting ready to finalize my thesis. And she was saying, I want to be able to walk in, sit and see you presenting your thesis. And she would ask, are you making progress? You know, it was tough time for me because of all the obligations I have, but she was there. And my husband, she was like, where are you? Do you need me to help with research? Or can you update me? What can I do? And he stopped at a master's degree, but he pushed for that because he knew I wanted to do it. I wanted to do it, and I got this support. And this is why I dedicated my thesis to both him and my mother, because they played a critical role.
And your mother saw you.
Yes, she saw me and she embraced me and she said, I've always been proud of you, but this one, c'est la cerise sur le gâteau, as they say in French. Yes. But to add, I wanted, if you allow me, to come back to what you said earlier about the need to network, to support each other. I can't agree with you more. Let me give you an example from my other grandmother, if we have time.
Yes, please.
In my culture, when children get to the age of 14, 15, both boys and girls, adults give them assignments to start like training you to become an adult in the future. When my turn came, I said I'm the third for sibling of four. My grandmother, it happened that my grandmother came to visit us in Lomé. And that week, my assignment was to be given money to buy what the household needed. So she said, since I'm here, let me go to the market with you. She was carrying the bag, I negotiate, I buy, and she was just there observing. That is the principle. They observe, and then at the end of the week, you are given feedback. She did it, and then I took pride of being a strong bargainer. I would bargain a lot. So we came back home, and I said, Grandma, do you see what I could buy with the money? I could buy with the money I have. Are you not proud of me? She looked at me seriously, and she said, shame on you, Claudine. Shame on you. I was like, why? And she said, you remember the woman who was selling maize and yams? You bargained to a point that she had no other choice than giving it to you because she cannot afford paying the transport back home with the yam and maize. Her husband may even exercise violence against her because she was not able to sell. And now she sold for cheap and she will be in trouble anyway. But you had money to buy it, but you took advantage of this power that you have, of being in your city, of having money, being educated over this poor woman. Never forget that you could have been her. She is your sister, your mother, your grandma, your aunt. She is me. She is you. Anytime you deal with a woman, wherever she sits, whatever country she is in, remember that it is you. And you have the moral responsibility to support each other. I was crying as she was talking to me. But I believe this is where I really built this consciousness of sisterhood, of networking with others, of supporting, and most importantly, for someone like me, my parents were educated, but they come from rural area, of giving back for women, for girls who were not as, I would say, privileged a little bit as me to be educated. And today, when I see young women, 20s, in their 20s and 30s, with no social commitments, not knowing what it takes for women to be educated, to have their voice in decisions that are made about their lives, I'm like, this is a loss of opportunity. They could enjoy education today because people, our generation and the generation of our mothers were there to fight for that. This is why it's so important. They are where they are today because our mothers and ourselves in our generation, we were there to fight for equality, for our rights. So this is why it is important that both women and men today, at what level you can do it, to have this commitment, especially, and I will finish on that, for women coming from places where gender inequality is deeper. When we see that you in Austria, as individual, Andrea, as the CEO of Care Austria, your team and people in Austria giving of their tax to care, to work to achieve this equality, the least we can do is to join our force, our strength, our capacity, wherever we sit around the globe for this equality, for women to be able to have access to assets, to produce, to education, to the voice in decision making, to equal opportunities, to equal pay for the equal job.
I think this was really a wonderful example, and I'm really touched by it, and I hope that also our listeners are, and I thank you for sharing that, Claudine, because the idea of being very ambitious is something that has to grow, of course, inside children and especially inside girls. But at the same time, we should be aware, all of us, also in very rich societies and saturated societies like the European ones, that nothing is for granted. What is the underlying cause of our wealth, of our rights that we have, and that we have to protect the things, the good things we have, and we should not take them for granted. Be it in the highly political discussion of migration, that is really a nasty debate, a highly politicized debate. Be it when it comes to gender equality, we should not forget our ancestors who prepared for many of us the path. And we should also be preparing a good ground for the next generations to come. And I know it's a bit outdated, but you talked a lot about solidarity, not taking advantage of others. This is something that our economical system, of course, is not helpful for, but it is good to be aware that we can decide often. And it is good to take decisions that others also can benefit from. I know that some of my listeners will say this is a very naive approach. On the other side, care is dealing with nothing else than enabling people and seeing that not advantages only are taken, but that as many people as possible in a civil society, and especially women and girls, can have meaningful participation. Because this is also something I wanted to touch base on with you. We talk about meaningful participation. It's not enough to bring women, lots of women to the table who are not educated, who are not able to express themselves. You need a lot of training. We are not necessarily talking about academic training, even not school education, but it is so fancy to say you are a powerful woman, but you need to have some tools and training to be powerful. And I know that one of the tools we are using, which is in real life more powerful than it sounds, are these village saving and loan groups that were invented by care staff in West Africa, which start at a minimum level in very remote areas. I'm sure most of our listeners cannot even imagine how remote areas can be. No access to school, no access to nothing, no access to health, nothing. People living on a subsistence day-to-day basis. I was together with Claudine in remote areas in Mali. It was even difficult to find some bread. People only lived on a handful of onions that they grew. And follow us in your minds in such a setting. And then village and loan saving groups, they can really sparkle the initial for independence, not only for women, but very strongly also for women.
Yes, indeed. And Andrea, you remember you and I, we went to Timbuktu like about 10 years ago or more, when it was still possible to go there. When I went to Mali as the country director, I went to visit, to meet with the governor of the that region at that time. And the person who introduced me, the lady who introduced me to the governor, was a former VSLA member, Voluntary Village Saving and Loan Association member. She started at that level. She was she ended her primary school degree before joining, and she joined the VSLA, and they started with not only saving, but information, awareness, and education on local laws, on what it takes, how local institutions worked at that time. And it is important what you mentioned. Being knowledgeable is not about sitting around the table and not understanding what is being discussed or not being able to contribute. It's even damageable. Do you say that? Do you say it is damageable for women if we are represented and we don't know, we don't understand what is being said, we don't know how to contribute? We will become people who sit with no ideas. But this lady, with the training, awareness raising information on how local institutions work, participated in elections, and she was elected as a representative from her community. And she knew about local planning. You rightly mentioned that in some of these communities, there is no potable water, no primary school, no health center. When we say health center, is even one room with the basics. They didn't have it. She was able, with other women from VSLAs, but also with men in her communities, to design a local plan that was funded. And this is how she got connected to the governor of the region. And she and I went there to meet. That was impressive for me, to be there at the table with her, talking about this. But when I knew first about the VSLA, I was like, oh, because women used to save like a tenth of euro or 2/10 of euro. I was like, how can you build a decent life with that? But at the same time,
we talk about cents. They start 20 cents of euro. That is what Claudine is talking about.
Okay. Yeah. No, thank you,
They
Andrea.
put 20 cents in a box every week, or
Yes.
10 cents in some regions. And of course, for more or less privileged people like us, you think, as Claudine said, if you save in 3 months, let's say €3, then you are already successful. How can you change your life with that? But this works. We have proven evidence. You need not believe in it. We have hard data and facts that this is the initial for economic growth for many people in very remote areas, right?
Absolutely. In Niger, in the elections that were conducted, local elections, I think 3 to 4 years ago or so, 70% of Village Saving and Loan Association members who were candidates were all elected. 70% of them. And they represented more than half women represented in local institutions through the VSLA. So it's not only about saving 10 or 20 cents per week. But moreover, we could also see the economic growth of these women from these little savings they have. Today, we have women who have put in place small businesses through the work they do in agriculture or investing in livestock. They have grown their business. I met with a woman in central part of Benin who has developed a business, and now she's employing her husband, who will drive the motorbike to. She produces vegetables and cereals. Her husband is her employee now. He would go with the motorbike that she bought to deliver to her clients. Mm-hmm. She was employing at that time 8 other women in addition to her husband. She started with these savings of 10 to 20 cents of euro. This is how it grows. But it also comes with training on how to manage an economic activity, how to save, how to just make your life from these little opportunities. And in addition, what we do as CARE and our local partners is to connect these women from village saving and loan associations to financial institutions, banks or microfinance institutions, so that they have access to credit and they grow their capacity. And we've managed to have them adapt their products to these women. So these are part of the science of hope. Concrete examples that tell us that investing in women makes change. One last point I wanted to make on this question, and you raised it earlier about solidarity. We see the same in places where we work. The question is, I don't owe anything to anybody. I manage myself to be educated. Why should I care about others? But if we don't, we live in a connected world. And I was sharing with a lady I met. She was asking why she should commit her time to talk about women's rights, education, etc. If you don't, you will continue to live in a society where others will abuse your rights, your children's rights in the future, because they will pretend they don't know. If you don't, we will have policies in place. They will not be enforced. You have a stronger voice. Just use it. It's for the younger generations, for the coming generations. If you don't benefit of it today, someone in your family will get that in the future. And you will prevent impoverishment of our society, because there's no way we can grow. We can achieve the growth we want to see if more than half our society is not educated, does not have access to resources to produce, does not have a voice to decision making.
And this is very true, not only for countries in West Africa, but this is globally true. And this is the practical explanation why it is worth to invest into organizations like CARE and to invest into our work, because we are a global institution and we work not only for gender equality, we work for fighting poverty worldwide, supporting vulnerable people that they can participate better in their civil societies. And this is also, we have hard data and facts on it, that when you help women to be equal, then the whole civil societies of any country are benefiting. Because what Claudine was explaining, to get women banked, to make them, to provide them access to bank services, I saw myself really very surprising examples of former village saving and loan groups who really have thousands of euro at their bank accounts. And then they are really becoming real stakeholders and investors for their own societies, for their villages, for their families. And of course, some of them are more ambitious than others, like it is in life. Yes. But in the end, we all benefit as a global community from the global work of an organization like CARE. Claudine, thanks very much for sharing so much with us. And I'm looking forward to our future cooperation. Thank you, Claudine.
Thank you, Andrea, for having me. And it's always a pleasure to partner and work with you across the globe. And thank you so much for your contribution, especially in West Africa, not only for development, but also on crisis we see in many countries, Chad, Niger, and soon in Burkina Faso, etc. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, my friend.
Thanks for listening. This was Care in Action, the podcast of Care Austria with Andrea Barstorff-Hager. For further information, go to care.at. Sponsored by CC Real.